Okay, so let's graph these. So our base function is y equals log base 2 of x. There's our point 1, 0, and our point 2, 1. The exponent of 4, the exponent of 2 that gives us 4 is 2. The exponent of 2 that gives us 8 is 3. We can get lots of points for this one. And here's our basic graph. We see that we're going to multiply the y values by 3. The y value here is 0. Multiplied by 3, it's still 0. The y value here is 1. Multiplied by 3, we get 3. The y value here is 2. Multiplied by 3, and we get 6. Last but not least, we shift the graph to the left, and so we get this point, this point, and this point, and the horizontal asymptote also shifts to the left 1, and we have our new graph. Our vertical asymptote is x equals -1, and I think we have what we need. Well, if I'm going to draw the inverse of that same function, switch the x and y, the vertical asymptote is x equals -1, so the horizontal asymptote is y is going to be -1. You see how we switch the x and the y. We have the point 0, 0 here. Switch x and y, it's still 0, 0. We have the point 1, 3 here, so we have the point 3, 1. And we have the point 3, 6. So how about the point 6, 3? I think I missed. Let's try this again. So then that should be my inverse of the function to the left. So for b, y equals 2 to the x is going to be my base function. So this is an exponential 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 4. Here is our parent graph. So we're going to flip it because of the negative. And so the points that are above are now below. So this point goes here, this point goes here, and this point goes here. And so that's the negative. And then we're going to shift that graph. Hang on, let's see. The 2 there shouldn't be there. The 2 is part of the question. So I flipped it. So we're here. That's the flip. And then we shift it to the right 2 and down 1. So this point to the right 2, down 1. This point to the right 2, down 1. This point to the right 2, down 1. And our horizontal asymptote, because this is an exponential function, is also going to go down 1. So that our new function should look something like this. So the only reflection is on the y, that's why we went from the top to the bottom. The x is not reflected, and then we shift it to the right 2 and down 1. Let's see if these points are correct. So we have the horizontal asymptote of y equals -1. So the vertical asymptote should be x equals -1. Switch the x and y. and this point is 1, negative 2. So negative 2, 1. So let's fix this graph. Negative 2, 1. And this point is 2, negative 4. So the inverse is negative 4, 2. And then if I draw that graph, it will look something like that, the inverse function. Wait a second, I think I graphed the wrong one. Again, I'll let you see my mistakes. Hopefully you can learn from them. I actually graphed the initial one instead. I should have graphed the final one. And so I should have this point, and this point. So 2, negative 2, negative 2, 2. This point, 3, negative 3, so negative 3, 3. And this point of 4, negative 5, so negative 5, 4. So I should have graphed the first time this point, and this point. Not these here. That was just the reflection. Okay, let's see if I can get this one straight. So ln, our base function, the 1, 0, and then 2.7, 1 are our basic points for ln graphs. We have to separate the reflection from the shift, so I factor out a negative. So our graph is going to reflect in the x direction, go to the right one, and the y value is going to be cut in half. So let's see if I did that. Looks like I didn't. Must have been tired when I did this one. So we have our basic graph. That's here, our ln graph. The negative reflects it in this direction. So we have these guys that are the open circle. Then I'm going to take the y values and cut them in half. So I'll have this x, and cutting 0 by half, I still have 0. And then I take those points and shift them to the right one. So I should take the x's, those points, and shift it to the right one. And so this point goes here, this point goes here, and this point goes here. And so that takes our graph, we reflected it, we've shrunken it by half, and we moved it to the right one. 0.00, switch the x and y, it's 0, 0. If I take a look at this point, negative 2, and then a fraction, a half. If I go a half, and then negative 2. Then this point here is like negative 4.7 and up 1, so if I go 1 and negative 4.7, that's about here. And so our graph makes a sharp left turn because the vertical asymptote was 1, and our horizontal asymptote is 1. All right, last but not least, we have our y equals 1/4 to the x as our base function. And so that's our exponential. We have the point 0, 1. And then if x is negative 1, the reciprocal of 1/4 is 4. And so our graph, because of the fraction, is our descending exponential function. And fortunately, all we do is move it to the left 3. So I think our transformation should have a negative here in the transformation. And so, sure enough, we take this point, move it to the right 1, to the left 1, 2, 3. Take this point 1, 2, 3, and here's our new graph. The horizontal asymptote of y equals 0 doesn't move. If the horizontal asymptote here is y equals 0, the vertical asymptote here is x equals 0. If this point is negative 3, 1, we have the point 1, negative 3. If this point is negative 4, 4, then this point is 4, negative 4. And here is our inverse graph, switching the x and the y.